Let me just start by talking about a term that's often used, but I think is often misunderstood. It's this term, the American dream. It isn't really about becoming rich or famous. It's about things that I think are much simpler and more fundamental than that. It's about a happy home. It's about the ability to live without fear for your safety or that of your family. It's about the freedom to worship any way you want. It's about the chance to get a good education and the job that allows you to achieve financial security and to retire comfortably. And I think most of all, and especially in this community, it's about leaving your children better off than yourself. The America that my parents came to in 1956, almost 60 years ago, was a place where you could find a middle-income job even if you didn't have higher education. That's how they made it to the middle class, by the way, working as a bartender and as a maid. But they desperately wanted we, their children, to have so much more than that, giving us a chance at a better life than theirs. That was their American dream. For them, it meant giving us the chance to do the thing they never got to do, attain a college degree. That's why from a very early age they used to tell us, "Tú tienes que estudiar," which means you have to study. And so growing up, I don't ever recall not considering going to college. The problem was my parents never made enough money to pay or to save for our education. So I was able, thank God, and to the generosity of this country, to use things like Pell Grants and student loans and work study and summer jobs to pay for a 4-year degree and eventually law school. So the loans I took out for my undergraduate degree were manageable. My legal education, on the other hand, was a little bit more expensive. And I paid for almost all of it entirely through public and private loans. So each semester, some of you, I see some students here today, so you might know the drill. Each semester you sign this promissory note, borrowing more money. I never sat down and calculated how much I could expect to make once I graduated and whether I would be able to afford the loan payments. And by the way, there was no source to provide, there was no source for that information to be provided for me anyways. So finally in 1996, I graduated from law school, and I had two things. I had a Juris Doctor in one hand, and I had over $100,000 in loans in the other. And then a few months later, the bills start to arrive. So my first job as an attorney, it paid fairly well. I was making over $50,000, which was more than my parents ever made. And I thought I was rich. But I was living with my parents. I was paying them rent. I was trying to save for my wedding and hopefully to buy a house. And then the $1,500 a month bills started coming in. And I realized not only was I not rich, I couldn't pay them. So I did the deferment, and then I did the forbearance, then I paid only interest for a while. The loans quickly became my single largest expense. I remember looking at the coupon book for one of the loans, and I was realizing that at the pace that I was paying them, I wouldn't pay them off until I was over 50 years of age. Now, in the time since I took my last exam, in fact, certainly in the year since my parents arrived in America, our country has changed tremendously. Our economy has undergone one of the most rapid and disruptive structural transformations since the Industrial Revolution. Before that economic revolution, the Industrial Revolution, your ability to make a living depended greatly on your ability to do the physical labor required of farm work. But with industrialization, for the first time in human history, you can make a living operating a machine or building things with your hands. And this created all sorts of jobs and opportunities for people who were once trapped in poverty. It pulled millions into the great American middle class, and it transformed this country into one of exceptional upward mobility. But now we are in a post-industrial era. The middle-class workers who once earned their living making things have seen their jobs leave to places with cheaper labor and fewer restrictions. And many middle-class careers have been replaced by automation and by technology. This new era that we're living in, it doesn't just come with challenges. It also comes with great opportunities. It creates new jobs and new careers that can actually pay more than the ones that they're replacing. But the higher paying jobs of this new era, unlike some of the jobs of the last, they require advanced skills and advanced education. So here's what we're facing. Those with the right advanced education are making more money than ever. But those who are not are falling further and further behind. The result is an opportunity gap in this country developing between haves and have-nots. Those who have advanced education and those who do not have advanced education. And if we do not reverse this trend, we will lose the upward mobility that made America exceptional. In the last century, in the 20th century, education became a viable option for millions of Americans like me. But in this new century, the right education is no longer an option. It has become a necessity for everyone. The problem is that we are trying to prepare people for the new economy using a higher education system built for the old economy. And as a result, many high-skilled, high-paying industries suffer from a shortage of labor, while too many low-paying industries suffer from a surplus. So in the coming decades, 63% of jobs will require post-secondary training. But if current education trends continue, we will fall short of filling these skilled positions by 300,000 people per year. Our single most important domestic priority should be to put in place policies that foster dynamic economic growth, policies that make this country the easiest and the best place in the world to innovate and create jobs. But ultimately, these jobs will not be created here if our people do not have the skills and the training that those jobs require. So among the most pressing challenges before us today is to transition to a new model of delivering higher education that equips Americans for the better paying careers of this new economy. Now, one of the central problems of our outdated higher education system is that it has become increasingly unaffordable for those who stand to benefit from it the most. Let me give you some statistics. Tuition rates have skyrocketed at a rate far exceeding the rise in inflation. So even when the Great Recession took hold 5 years ago and Americans had less to spend, the rise in tuition only continued to accelerate. Between 2006 and 2012, the cost of college increased by 16.5%. What this has done is it has forced a growing number of students from low and middle income families to choose between taking on large amounts of student loan debt or giving up on their dreams for an advanced education. Today, college graduates in America have more than $1 trillion in combined student loans. And keep in mind that this is borrowed at interest rates far above home mortgage rates. This unaffordable debt is a lot more than just a number on a piece of paper. It has a real-life impact that affects our economy from top to bottom. It delays the ability of young Americans to get married, to buy a home, or start a family. It keeps them from saving for a rainy day or investing for retirement. Now, one of the main reasons tuition rates are rising is that some colleges know that the federal government will continue lending students money as much as they need in federal guaranteed loans. And these hiked tuition rates effectively form a free subsidy for some colleges and universities, which use these funds to finance a series of non-academic pursuits, ranging from dining options to construction projects for athletics. Many schools use this money to finance various administrative positions that have little of anything to do with educating students. In fact, these non-instructional positions were behind a 28% expansion of the higher education workforce from 2000 to 2012. Now, when I was in the State House, the universities told us every year that they needed higher tuition to retain quality faculty and pursue goals that they called vital to student learning. I understand this argument. It is important to ensure students receive a quality education for their tuition dollars. But there also comes a point where quality and affordability must meet. We simply cannot continue to price people out of higher education. Making these rising costs even more burdensome is a federal government that seems to try its best to be confusing and bureaucratic. Even the process of applying for federal financial aid is made unnecessarily difficult. So we should examine ways to cut back on the complexity of the federal aid application to ensure students are not discouraged by the process and are able to complete it quickly and accurately. The federal government also uses a tangled and bureaucratic system of tax policies. What students and parents need from our tax code is simple. So let's stop pretending it's so complicated. What they need is their educational expenses to be tax deductible. That's why Representative Schock and I have proposed a bill to update and consolidate higher education tax increases into one simple, easy-to-understand tax credit. Our bill would help millions of Americans pursue higher education, simplify the tax code, and save taxpayers money. Now, our colleges and universities must do their part by making it among their highest priorities to find the right balance between quality and cost. And simplifying the tax benefits of higher education will help students deal with the cost of higher education as well. That this alone is not enough. Today, I'm grateful for the opportunity to offer 3 additional ideas aimed at helping Americans earn a practical, advanced education at an affordable price and in a reasonable time frame. First, we must recognize it is no longer enough to merely get a degree. If you want to improve your chances of finding a good-paying job, it is vital that you get the right degree, geared towards the right industry. Not all college majors have the same success rate when it comes to connecting students with good jobs. Nationally, majors such as business, liberal arts, and hospitality have underemployment rates of over 50%. There are simply more graduates than jobs in these industries. Meanwhile, engineering, health services, and education all have underemployment rates of less than 25%. Students and families need to be equipped with the information necessary to make well-informed decisions about which majors at which institutions are likely to yield the best result on investment. Excuse me. That's why I, along with Senator Ron Wyden, have proposed the Student Right to Know Before You Go Act, which aims to give students reliable data on how much they can expect to make versus how much they can expect to owe. Second, we must make the burden of student loans more manageable. So to do so, I propose that we make income-based repayment system the automatic, oh, my water. You must have seen that on TV. Thank you. Second, we must make the burden of student loans more manageable. To do so, I propose that we make the income-based repayment system the automatic repayment methods for all student loans. So under this system, graduates would make loan payments in proportion to how much they earn. So the more you make in a given month, the more you would pay back. The less you make, the less your monthly payment will be. Now, we currently have various income-based repayment programs that are already in place, but they are terribly insufficient and replete with unintended consequences. Many graduates don't even know the programs exist, making them extremely underutilized. And perhaps it's no great surprise that those who do attempt to use them often get tangled in a slow and frustrating federal bureaucracy. Making income-based repayment the universal repayment method would end this confusion. And finally, we must create alternatives to our current system of accessing and paying for higher education. And there are several things we can do to foster more choice and more innovation. For example, what if in addition to traditional loans, we could give students the option of paying for their education without acquiring any student loans at all? Let's say you're a student who needs $10,000 to pay for your last year of school. Instead of taking this money out in the form of a loan, you could apply for a student investment plan from an approved and certified private investment group. This is an option, not a requirement. The student loan would still be there if that's what you wanted to do instead. But under a student investment plan, These investors would pay, say, your $10,000 tuition in return for a percentage of your income for a set period of time after graduation. So let's say, for example, 4% a year for 10 years. In deciding whether to invest in you or not, the group would look at factors such as your major, the institution you're attending, your record in school, and use this to make a determination about the likelihood of you finding a good job and of paying them back. Unlike loans, you would be under no legal obligation to pay back the entire $10,000. It's an investment that they're making. Your obligation would be to pay back, in this example, 4% of your income per year for 10 years, regardless of whether that ends up amounting to more or less than $10,000. If it amounts to more than $10,000, they made a great investment. If it amounts to less, they took a risk. We also need policies that recognize that many Americans don't have the money, the time, or the inclination to spend 4 to 6 years on a campus. So maybe you're a single parent who needs to work full-time and raise your children. If you are, you can't just drop everything and move to college for 4 years. Or maybe you're a high school student who wants to fix airplane engines as a career, but you lose interest in your schoolwork because it only seems geared towards college-bound students. For millions of Americans trapped in low-paying jobs or at risk of dropping out of high school, higher education may be the only way they will ever be able to move to a better-paying job. What they need is more affordable degrees or career education options that are tailored to their specific needs and talents. We should make career and vocational education more widespread and more accessible. For example, here in Miami, the local school district has partnered with a car dealership to create an innovative approach to career education. The students in this program attend traditional high school classes each morning, and then they go to the auto dealership where they are trained to be certified technicians. When they finish high school, they graduate with a high school diploma, but also with a job-ready industry certification from an automobile manufacturer. Another example of these sorts of things are apprenticeship programs, which provide valuable on-the-job training for employees. So instead of having to pay for schooling, an employee can often get paid to learn and work towards a degree while on the job. We need policies that encourage industries to expand apprenticeship programs and work more closely with their local workforce training boards to make these viable options for gaining certification or degree credit. We also have to create more pathways for working parents to attain the equivalent of a college degree at the more accessible state college level. So our host here today, Miami-Dade College, is a pioneer in this effort. Let's fully utilize innovation and technology to make learning easier to access. Now, to their credit, many traditional colleges and universities now offer online educational opportunities. Some of the best are right here in Florida. My alma mater, the University of Florida, has 2 online courses ranked in the top 5 nationally. Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach also has one in the top 5. These university-offered online courses are a welcome alternative for many students. But unfortunately, the costs of these courses is often comparable to attending the physical classes themselves. With all the resources that exist now on the web, most of which are completely free, shouldn't there be more alternatives? The spread of knowledge through the internet is one of the greatest technological breakthroughs of our time. So why hasn't our education system found a way to harness it and to allow it to count towards a person's post-secondary education? And the answer is that we have a broken accreditation system that, quite frankly, is designed to favor established institutions while blocking out new, innovative, and more affordable competitors. In order for a college or for a university to be recognized as a degree-conferring institution, it has to be approved or it has to be accredited by an independent regulatory board. The problem is that these boards are controlled in large parts by the institutions that have already been accredited, which are typically the 4-year colleges and universities. This means that their accreditation status is rarely questioned, while the status of potential competitors, such as free online course providers, is rarely given ample consideration. Reforming this broken system is crucial to opening broad, innovative pathways to higher education for all Americans. There are already some unique and powerful proposals for reform out there today. For example, Senator Mike Lee has proposed allowing states to take control of the accreditation process. Members of both parties are beginning to realize that for every day, are beginning to realize more every day that for every day that we delay bold accreditation reform, our education system is leaving more Americans behind to languish in a dwindling market of low-skilled jobs. Action on this issue can be and should be swift. Free online learning is already a reality. We just need an established system to catch up to it. And here's how it would work. After completing a free online course, a student could pay a relatively small fee to take a standardized test that, if they passed, would allow them to count the class that they received online towards a degree or towards a job certification. This is the same concept we use to allow students to count AP classes in high school towards college credit. By allowing real-world experiences to count in the same way, we could create what would virtually amount to be a debt-free degree. To help make this a reality, Congress should establish a new independent accrediting board to ensure the quality of these free courses and make the credits transferable into the traditional system. The board would factor in input from the private sector and would allow students to qualify for some type of federal aid to cover any potential costs. In addition to these online courses, by the way, there are nearly infinite numbers of ways for an individual to learn and master a trade, and it's quite frankly impossible to accredit them all. For example, an aspiring cook may have mastered their craft from books and from free online tutorials, or perhaps from the training of a parent who is a certified chef, or a parent who simply cooks up a mean ropa vieja after years of preparing it for their own family. Because we all know that most of our parents or grandparents, if they wanted to go work at a restaurant as a chef, for example, they wouldn't need to take a class to prove that they can cook. These people should have the opportunity to prove their abilities and gain the certification necessary for employment without spending tens of thousands of dollars in a formal culinary school. We could jumpstart and create private sector confidence in this practice by creating a pilot program to hire workers such as these in federal agencies. The agencies would identify occupations where employees could have learned skills from non-traditional sources. The pilot program would then systemize the hiring of these individuals over a 5-year period, allowing the results to be tracked and reported back to form the basis for our future policies. What I suspect is that we will find that in many fields, the source of an employee's education is often far less important than many previously thought. That those who have the skills and the aptitude to be successful in a job deserve the opportunity to be considered for employment, even if they learn the trade from a non-traditional source. In closing, let me just say that I feel that the policies that I've outlined here, and hopefully the ones we'll discuss in a moment, they're really not about just education. They're about our shared and our unifying belief in this country by our people that no one should be held captive by the circumstances of their birth. These are ideas about equality of opportunity, the very ideal that transformed a young and diverse nation into the freest and most prosperous one in all of human history. Enacting these and other innovative policies to reform higher education, I believe, should be among our most urgent priorities. Because what's at stake is literally our very identity as an exceptional nation. In the history of the world, man has never known a country such as this. Almost anyone who has ever lived in societies where you were trapped by whatever your parents did. That's what you were allowed to do. If you didn't know the right people and weren't connected, there were things you just couldn't do. But what made us exceptional is that we never believed that to be right. And for over 200 years, we have steadily tried to make sure that that is not what most people face here. The problem is we're now facing an economy that's so rapidly changing that unless we adjust to it, people are going to get stuck in the circumstances of their birth. They are going to get left behind by who they were born to and where they were born. This new era that we're in, it offers great promise, but it's created real insecurity. We have millions of people who are living one broken down car, one destructive home, one serious illness away from total financial collapse. We have people who work their whole lives in one industry that have watched their jobs disappear overnight. And I know parents who are heartbroken knowing that their children did everything they were told they needed to do to succeed. And now they can't find a job in the field they studied for. The Great Recession brought about much of this great insecurity. But in some ways, all it did was speed up changes that were already happening. And it's left so many people feeling as if a better tomorrow is out of reach for people like them. We can't let that stand. Because like the great economic transformations of the past, the one we are witnessing now is scary and disruptive. But just like the Industrial Revolution at the turn of the last century, this new era offers the real opportunity to build a new great American middle class. Through trade and technology and scientific innovation and 21st century manufacturing, we can create fields and industries that have never existed before. And we can create jobs and careers that pay more than the jobs that they have replaced. This is the opportunity of this time. And I believe that there are no people on earth better prepared to seize it than Americans. If we can just bring higher education, 21st century higher education, within reach of more of our people, then I truly believe with all my heart that this 21st century, like the one before it, will also be an American century.